This game looks so good that people are starting to question if it's even real, and honestly, I don't blame them. Before we get into it, if you're into this kind of breakdown, hype, drama, and a bit of reality check, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Do you actually believe Crimson Desert will deliver? Or are we looking at another disaster waiting to happen? Because right now the internet genuinely can't decide. So here's the situation. Crimson Desert has been around for years, but not in a normal way. It didn't just slowly develop like most games, it kind of transformed. It started as an MMO, then shifted direction, then got partially rebooted, and now it's being pushed as a massive single-player open-world experience with heavy cinematic elements. On paper, that already sounds risky. Projects that change direction this many times usually don't end cleanly. But despite that, every time this game shows up again, it somehow looks even more impressive than before. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Recent previews, hands-on impressions, and showcase builds, especially around events like GDC, brought Crimson Desert back into the spotlight. And not just a little bit, people are talking about it again, like it's a potential Game of the Year contender. Not because of marketing promises, but because of what's actually being shown. The physics systems alone look ridiculous. Characters don't just attack. They interact with the environment, with enemies, with momentum, as you see people getting grabbed, thrown, reacting dynamically instead of playing canned animations. It feels closer to a simulation than a scripted action game. The animations are on another level too. Transitions between actions look smooth in a way that most games still struggle with. There's no obvious snapping, no stiff movement. Everything blends together in a way that makes it feel almost too perfect. And then there's the world itself. Large scale, detailed, dense, and seemingly alive. Not just visually, but systemically. It gives off that rare vibe where you feel like things are happening whether you're there or not, so naturally people are impressed. But at the same time, people are suspicious. Because the more you look at it, the more one question keeps coming back. How is this even possible? And that's where the whole narrative flips. Instead of pure hype, you start seeing doubt. A lot of doubt. There's this growing feeling in the community that what we're looking at might not be a real, fully playable game, but something closer to a perfect slice, a controlled, polished version designed to look incredible, but not necessarily representative of the final product. Basically the classic vertical slice problem, but on steroids. And if you've been around gaming long enough, you already know why that's a red flag. We've seen games that looked revolutionary in previews only to launch in a completely different state. And recently with situations like the day before, the community is way more paranoid than it used to be. People don't just get hyped anymore, they analyze, they question, they assume something is off. And Crimson Desert is triggering all of those instincts. On top of that, there's the developer itself, Pearl Abyss. Now, to be fair, they're not amateurs. Black Desert Online proved they can build insanely advanced systems and push technical boundaries, but at the same time, that game also showed their weaknesses, messy design decisions, heavy grind, and systems that don't always come together in a clean, player-friendly way. So now people are asking what happens when you take that same studio and give them an even bigger, more ambitious project. Do they finally deliver something incredible? Or do they collapse under the weight of their own ambition? Because let's be honest, Crimson Desert doesn't look like a safe project. It looks like something that either becomes a masterpiece or falls apart completely. There's very little middle ground here, and then we get to the community reactions, which are honestly one of the most interesting parts of this whole situation. You've got one side saying this is easily one of the most impressive games ever shown, and if it delivers even 70% of what we're seeing, it could dominate the industry. But on the other side, you've got people saying this doesn't even look like a real game, more like a tech demo stitched together to simulate gameplay. Comment like, there's no way this runs like that in real conditions, or this is too clean to be actual gameplay, are everywhere, and the wild part is both sides kind of make sense, because visually, systemically, everything we've seen looks almost too consistent, too polished, too intentional, which leads into another layer of the discussion, AI. Now, there's no clear confirmation of how much AI is being used in development here, but the conversation is already happening. People are speculating about AI-assisted animations, procedural behaviors, upscaling techniques, basically anything that could help create that next-gen ++ feel. And that opens a completely different concern. Not just is this real, but how much of this is actually handcrafted and how much is generated or assisted? Because right now, players are becoming increasingly skeptical of anything that feels too perfect. There's this growing fear that what we're seeing isn't a natural gameplay experience, but something enhanced, curated, or even partially simulated to look better than it actually is. In other words, smoke and mirrors. And the gaming industry hasn't exactly earned full trust lately, so that skepticism isn't coming out of nowhere. So where does that leave us? Here's the real talk. Crimson Desert might genuinely be one of the most ambitious games of this generation. As if even most of what we've seen is real and functional in a full game environment, then yes, we're potentially looking at a Game of the Year contender. But if it isn't, if this is another case of overpromising, overpolishing, and under-delivering, then this could easily turn into one of the biggest disappointments we've seen in years. And that's why this topic is exploding right now, because it's not just hype anymore, it's hype versus trust. It's "this looks incredible" versus "there's no way this is real." And until we get a solid release date, a full gameplay showcase, and actual proof of how this runs outside of controlled demos, that tension isn't going anywhere. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Crimson Desert is the real deal, or are we watching another perfectly crafted illusion? Drop your opinion in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where you stand on this. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around, because we're definitely going to be coming back to this story, because one way or another this game is going to be remembered.